Hey guys, Eric and Kim here. We are going to review Dune. That is the 2021 version of Dune, based on the 1965 novel. I am going to massacre a lot of names, Kim, here. You can try to help me through this, starting with the director of this film, plus a lot of fictional names. Let's see, Denis Villeneuve. That's one. Go ahead.
That's one pronunciation. I'm going to say Villeneuve.
Okay, you say it sounds. Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
We can agree on Denis. Maybe we'll stick with that.
Sure. DV. That's what I'm going to say. DV. Director of Prisoner, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. Definitely a person with an epic vision, which is good because this is based on an epic sci-fi story. Here, Kim, anytime I mispronounce something, throw it. Try to help me out here. The basic story here, thousands of years in the future. Here we go. Duke Atreides. I think I got that right. And his family travel to the planet Araxis to take control of the mining of spice. This is a substance that can get you high. I think maybe gives you superpowers. It definitely powers interstellar spaceships, and it makes it the most valuable substance in the galaxy. That being the case, other people want control of it as well, leading to some conflict with the evil Baron Harkonnen, maybe.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah.
In the midst of this, the Duke's son, the blissfully named Paul, has been having dreams of the future, and he might serve a key role in the coming conflict. That is Dune, baby. Kim, let me ask you first, overall thoughts. Also, what is your background with Dune? Like, how much had you read the book? Had you seen the David Lynch film, et cetera, et cetera?
First of all, excellent summary, Eric.
Thank you.
And my background, I've loved the book Dune since I was a child. I read it quite early on. I remember interviewing Rebecca Ferguson once and asking her about Dune and telling her this, and she was quite astounded that I took it in. I'm not saying I took it in at the age of 7 or whatever, but I enjoyed it and I liked sandworms. Anyway, I've since read it. After that, I read it recently, and I have seen David Lynch's Dune, and I like it controversially. I think it's been reappraised in recent years anyway, despite tanking when it came out.
Yeah.
And that's the first book is my love. I know the other books less, and Children of Dune I'm familiar with the TV series. And so yeah,
you are
overall thoughts. Have you asked me for overall thoughts now, or should I take a break?
No, I think you should do it. Do it.
I thought it was brilliant. I think it's a masterpiece, and I've got nothing bad to say about it. Actually, I think Villeneuve has pulled off a feat that maybe no one thought possible. That Jodorowsky's Dune was a prospect and never got made, but is this legendary never made film that I think would be up there in people's standing, and that there was a documentary made about it, and we know a lot about it, about what it would have looked like, is kind of a benchmark against this, and I think it absolutely stands up. I love what he's done with this, super impressive.
So I like this, that we come from such flip sides of going into it. As I was kind of insinuating with my help me with the names thing, I am a complete Dune noob. Of course, I'm aware of Dune in the public consciousness, and I knew that there were spice and space worms. Those were two things that stuck out to me, but I'd never seen any of the adaptations, didn't see the Lynch movie, didn't see the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. I'd never read the books. And so had very limited knowledge of any of this, except for those little things that had seeped through. And I debated, I almost read the book in the lead up to the movie. And then I thought, you know what? I don't want to. Let's kind of go and clean it. It's rare I can do that and kind of go in and just see the movie on its own terms. So yeah, that was my whole thing going into it. But loving, this director's work and his vision, and then thinking the previews looked really cool. Overall, I really like this movie. I'm not quite with you, Kim, as far as how much you, I think, loved it, but I really liked it. It took me a little while to get into it. The thing is, by the way, when I'm joking about the names and all the things in the movie, I have behind me a bunch of Star Wars stuff. It's all fun nonsense. Like, if you start to say all these names, all these sci-fi worlds, it's great. And once you get into it, you get into it. So for me, this was like whoa, they're throwing a lot at you. And the first 20 minutes or so It was like I wasn't quite following everything, even though I was like, that's okay. And then I really got into it. I think this movie is visually remarkable. Audio, I don't even think about that too much, but the sound design of this film was really excellent. And a lot has been talked about, the fact this will be an HBO Max in the US as well. And there's been a lot of conflict, even with like the studio and the filmmakers about that. It seemed like they really didn't want that to be the case. I should say Legendary, not Warner Brothers, who is putting on HBO Max. I will say, if you can and if you feel safe to do so, you should see this in a theater, because it is that kind of movie, that sort of visually dense, immersive film. I saw it in IMAX and it looked spectacular. Yeah, it was really, really impressive. And so I definitely kind of got brought into that world. And while I wouldn't say it 100% like emotionally affected me, and we'll get to that a little bit more, I still thought it like had an impact and made me want to see more. So can't complain there. What are sort of some of the highlights for you, Kim, especially as someone who knew this story well going in?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I rarely say this because I'm a strong advocate of being able to watch movies at home and having them make the same impact on the small screen, or maybe a slightly different experience. But here, while I will definitely look forward to watching it at home, it definitely is a film that has an extra dimension on the big screen with the sound, as you say. The Hans Zimmer score is incredible. It's this booming, relentless pounding soundtrack to the movie that adds so much, and the huge scale. And Villeneuve's aim with this was to make humanity, was to make man like this tiny ant in these huge landscapes. And of course that comes across best on the biggest screen possible. And I think he succeeds in that. So going in, I was one of the things that really surprised me about it, that I loved, was the acting. Now that might sound strange because obviously there are some great actors attached to this, but I was worried about having so many big names and obvious names attached to the project, and what that might take away. But actually, you almost forgot that you were watching Chalamet and Momoa. They really kind of bought into Villeneuve's vision, and all of them delivered these kind of, I felt, restrained performances that were really powerful because of that. It would have been easy to kind of go overboard with all of this because it's so dramatic and large scale, and nobody does. And for me, they were all really affecting. And particularly, we talked a little bit about emotion, or you did just now, and I think what you're going to say is you maybe didn't feel that. I'm preempting that, but I've watched it twice now actually, and the tenderness amongst the Atreides is really powerful for me. It's really kind of subtly delivered through, a look here, a touch there. And I don't just mean Paul and Leto and Jessica, I mean the wider circle as well. The lovely relationship between Duncan Idaho, Jason Momoa's character, and Paul Atreides is really sweet. So that was my biggest takeaway, the performances and what they brought.
Yeah, we should mention, like, what an insane cast it is, right? Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Stellan Skarsgård, David Bautista, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem. Some of these people have very small parts that I presume will be larger in the sequel, if there is a sequel, we should say. But yeah, a great cast that I think did a lot of heavy lifting, I can say, for someone like me, who is going into this new, very dense world that has a lot to kind of explain up front. I like the casting a lot, as far as, these sort of like people that kind of bring weight with them, that you can count on. And I think, like, you kind of believe in their history. I will say, some of it was a little cold emotionally for me, but one thing I would think is the opposite, and that I really like that you mentioned, is the relationship between Momoa and Chalamet in the film. That Duncan Idaho, played by Momoa, he's really good in this movie. It's almost like a version of kind of what we all imagine Jason Momoa is like in real life, which is a very lovable, gregarious, outgoing guy who could also beat the hell out of you if he needs to. I very much enjoyed. He has this sort of mentor slash uncle. He's not his real uncle, but like an uncle-like relationship with Paul, that I thought was like kind of my favorite little like emotional component of the movie. You know, and I did like the family in general. And then yeah, just the you know, going back to the sort of scope and scale of it all, there's it really kind of buys into everything. It's just like there's such confidence in what is being portrayed and this world. And even when I couldn't 100% follow all the backstory they were giving us, I still felt like, oh, you know, I really like how they are just going full steam ahead with this, and portraying a lot of like, you know, that there is this history, that there's this depth, and I think the actors bring so much to that throughout the film. Now, my next part was asking if you had any notable issues, but I think you kind of already said you didn't, right?
No, I didn't, honestly. But you know, my biggest gripe is that it ended where it did, and I mean, I was ready for more. And of course, this kind of finishes around halfway through the story in the first book. And if there is a sequel, that will tell the rest of the story of the first book. And you know, very much like when I first watched The Lord of the Rings, or the first film, I could have strapped in for the rest, you know, for the full 9 hours or however long it was. And I felt the same here. I wanted to see the rest of the story play out. So I mean, that's not really a gripe, because I'll be able to do that if and when the second movie gets made.
Yeah, I agree with you. The ending is one of my handful of gripes. I understood that, you know, going in, that this is half the book. You know, the movie literally opens by saying Dune Part 1. And so naturally there's not a big conclusion, but I did feel as a movie, they could have picked a better spot. There's actually kind of a more dramatic, intense moment about 20 minutes before it does end that I thought would have probably been a better way to leave off than where they actually do. It's just a little subdued for this kind of movie. You kind of want, I personally felt like it should have left on kind of a bigger note going into the next one. And then, yeah, the opening was interesting because I totally get, this is based on a very, you know, dense novel with a lot to explain. They did the best they could, even though it kind of made me chuckle. What they do at the opening of this movie is Zendaya does voiceover telling you some of the backstory, and then Paul listens to these sort of lessons that tell him, and so these are the two ways they kind of use to give you exposition and backstory. It's a little clunky, but I understood that without having someone narrating the whole movie, or you know, it's just kind of sometimes what will happen when you're doing this. I did wonder if there was a more elegant way to deliver some of that information, while also understanding it's a lot of information to deliver. So and then, you know, I as much as I praise the visuals in this movie, I will say one funny thing is I did think a couple times, I thought this is a very dark, I mean, visually dark movie. And a couple times it seemed almost comical to me how these people have like interstellar space travel, but they don't have a lot of lights. They're like walking around in very dark rooms. There's a part where Paul's walking towards his parents and he's this cool floating like lit up orb with him. But I was like, can't they just put some lights on the wall? Like, just install some more there. Yeah,
Kill
so
the atmosphere.
it would kill the atmosphere. Yeah, so like I said, like there are elements of the movie that didn't like 100. I don't want to say it was at arm's length, because I was like elbow's length, because I got more drawn in as it went on. Though it lost me a little bit in like the last 10-15 minutes, just because I did think kind of like it lost a little momentum. But yeah, I was very intrigued throughout. A couple things with especially with Duncan Idaho and Paul, like kind of grabbed me emotionally. Maybe I wanted a little more, but yeah, there was still plenty there for me. Overall, final thoughts there, Kim. I mean, I think you've kind of said it all. And did anything else jump out to you about it?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned, you know, I did mention the acting, but I didn't mention Stellan Skarsgård's Baron Harkonnen, who I thought was disgusting and horrible and really scary. Without again, you know, it was a restrained performance, and the script was taught, dialogue was minimal really, and I loved the way that the film is able to get over this horrific character without all that, you know. And Skarsgård was awesome in the role, and Batista as his kind of right-hand man, nephew, I think he is, the Beast, Raban, Glossu the Beast Raban, and he's really good at these roles. He did it in the Bond film Spectre, and he worked with Villeneuve in Blade Runner 2049 and was a replicant, and small role, but really, really good in that. And he keeps impressing me in these roles. So shout out to them, and Charlotte Rampling as, I'm going to just say Helen, because she has a long name. The Reverend Mother. I thought she was impressive.
And then David Desmalchin, it just pops up in everything these days.
Yes,
Was one of the Baron's kind of right-hand man. Yeah, Stellan Skarsgård is great. It took me a second to even realize that was him under the makeup. And he's really good and creepy. I wanted more for Batista to do. I love him in Blade Runner 2049, one scene, and yet it's a wonderful scene that really shows you like what a great actor this guy is. But it is one of those things where I'm like, I'm guessing maybe he might have more to do if they get to do a sequel. We shall see. By the way, I don't want to get specific here. There's one character whose fate was very murky for me near the end of this movie to a strange extent. And then someone told me a little bit more about where things go. And I'm like, okay, but I did kind of feel like needed to point us in one direction or the other. But I'll leave it at that. And then the other last thing I want to say is the Star Wars of it all. You have a piece up right now on Fandom that kind of talks about this, about the sort of all the sci-fi that Dune influence that came after it, Star Wars being a huge part of that. And watching this, I was like, oh yeah, completely. I mean, there is an evil empire. There is an unseen emperor out there that they keep mentioning. Obviously, the main setting is a desert planet. There's a lot of interesting parallels there. And as someone, as you can tell, loves Star Wars, I thought it was like kind of really cool and fascinating, kind of in the way that the more you learn about John Carter, you realize like the influences there. I think it's it doesn't make me like angry, like, oh my god, they something I loved was ripped off from this other thing. It's just to show you the impact, right? Because someone who hasn't read Dune, it's like, wow, yeah, this thing really resonated. And you spoke to a bunch of the people who worked on the movie, right, Kim, about that?
Yeah, that's right. And so we've got quotes scattered throughout this article about the sci-fi movies that Dune influenced, and they all talk a lot about Star Wars, of course. You know, young boy who has a destiny and all of that. There's so much more in it that you'll see comes from Dune. But interestingly, Denis Villeneuve, who I spoke to, talked about the challenge it was distancing his version of Dune from the Star Wars we know, because it's so visually iconic. And he talks about in the article how he went about doing that, the two weapons he used to do that. So
you should check that out. Check out that article. I'll ask Brian to put a link into the description of this for you guys to check out. So what would you give Dune a rating? I'm guessing it's going to be a pretty positive one here, Kim.
Yeah, I think this will come as no surprise. It's 5 from me. I thought it was pretty flawless, a masterpiece.
I am giving it a 3.5 out of 5. I really liked it. I can't say I loved it, but I want more, right? I think that's the main thing, is like I would eagerly embrace if they make the sequel. Our own Spencer would be aghast if they didn't. He's been very Dune excited. I've told him I'm thinking good thoughts for you as well, Kim. I'm thinking good thoughts. I think we have a good chance, and if and when they make it, I'll be there for it as well. So, guys, those are our thoughts on Dune. Like we said, it'll be in theaters. It'll also be on HBO Max. If you can, go see it in theater on a very big screen. It's pretty dang cool that way. All right, guys. Thanks for watching this, and we'll have more here at Fandom.